Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, your cosmic GPS for life, love, and everything written in the stars. We're Tali and Ophira Edut, the AstroTwins, here to decode the astrology of the moment and help you navigate your destiny like a pro.
Hey everyone, welcome to December. Tali here in Seattle.
Sophie in New York as we're rolling into our birthday week. Woohoo!
Yay, Tuesday, December 2nd. Us and Britney Spears and Janelle Monáe and Nelly Furtado are all going to be celebrating together. And Tretch from Naughty by Nature, you know, who those of you who are Gen Xers remember him. How could we forget Hip Hop Hooray?
Johnny Versace too has our birthday. Yeah.
Juice WRLD, the late Juice WRLD had our birthday too. Sad story. He was a talented artist, but drugs took over for him. Sages are intense people sometimes. What can we say?
And here we are in Sag season. So, you know, it's so funny. Birthdays to me, I was gonna spend this birthday in Seattle with Tali for the solar return chart. We talked about that, I think, a little last week. On your birthday every year, you get a chart for the year based on where you are. The planets will all be in the same signs, but the houses that they're in, which determine which area of life they activate, are moved around based on your location. So I like to try to proactively look at where the houses fall ahead of time so I can maybe plan to be in different places. But, you know, things change throughout the year. So I decided the New York chart was fine, but it's kind of interesting, like how I feel about celebrating my birthday as the 4 minutes younger twin. Like Tali is real. One difference between us is that Tali is really good at planning events and parties. And if left to my own devices, I'm just like, I don't know what to do. So if we're together, I usually celebrate. But if we're not, I'm just like, all right, I'll just do something with the family. There's a lot of pressure on birthdays.
Yeah, so that's that little difference we have in our chart. On the cusp of the fifth house, I have Taurus, fifth house of celebration, and I'm 29 degrees Taurus, you're 0 degrees Gemini. So you'll go and gather all the people for it, and more the merrier. And I'm like, I just steam mopped my entire house. And
I know you'll like plan out the food and all those Taurusy things. I do it the Gemini way. Like if my twin is there, then I like, give me a job, I'll do it. But like thinking of it all myself, it's not that I can't, but it's not as joyful for me. So, you know, I'll just end up doing whatever. But I have to say, like, I joke that like birthdays are my job. So like we're in the birthday business as astrologers. So I'm curious if anyone who's listening who is an astrologer, how you feel about celebrating your birthday. It's probably varies by sign, but to me it's like, maybe this is a day I'm not going to think about birthdays, but it never works out that way.
You know, what's going to happen is what always happens, because the cusp of our 5th and 11th house is groups and friends too, is also different. That's a one, you know, you're a 10-degree Capricorn rising. I'm a 9-degree Capricorn rising. So you have a 0 degree Sag on the cusp of the 11th, and I have 29 degrees Scorpio. So I will get into all the details, but then I'll like freak out, like, oh God, I hope everyone has a good time. And you'll just spontaneously gather people and probably go do something really fun. You always wind up doing something fun. You just do it more spontaneously.
I just don't like to plan. I'm like, if you have a plan for our birthday, great. I'll tell everyone to show up where and when, but orchestrating and planning it, not so much.
This is a good moment. We were talking about this earlier. One of the things we're doing for the 3rd year in 2026 is offering our Become Your Own Astrologer course, which is an 8-week course, or 16-week if you go on to our level 2 oracles. And it really has been one of our favorite things to do. We have this beautiful community of students, now friends who study. It's a smaller group. We've had about 50 people in, but somehow, not everyone comes every time. And we also are really good at remembering and communing with multiple people. We have those Scorpio stelliums in our chart, but we are now offering it. We're opening it. We usually don't open it until the new year, but this year we decided to open it early and do a Black Friday special of $500 off. So if you're someone who's wanting and curious and wanting to learn how to read birth charts, or you're a astrologer, a baby astrologer who wants to go pro, or somebody who's really steeped in it but wants to make sure that you are doing it right and you want pro level advice, highly recommend jumping in the course. So we're going to be extending that $500 off just for our podcast listeners. If you go to astrostyle.com/holiday, and we'll keep that up for you guys this week. And then we're going to take that down and it goes up to the regular price. But it's a great deal. And we have monthly payment plans for it as well. You can pay in full, or and save a little more even, or you can do our monthly payment plans. But the first 8 weeks of Become Your Own Astrologer, we get into the planets, the signs, the houses, and the aspects, the 4-part puzzle of your birth chart. And you're going to understand how to read degrees, understand what role every planet plays in your chart. We have a movie metaphor that we do. It's like, if the birth chart is a movie of your life, the planets are the actors, the zodiac signs are in are the costumes they're wearing, the houses are in are the stages or the movie sets, and the angles, the aspects between them are the scenes that they're acting out in your life. And you will understand yourself at a level you never did before. We also have a certification option, so you can get certified for completing the course. And then the oracles level, we get into more advanced relationship forecasts, transits, so you can forecast the future, progress charts, relocation charts, some astrocartography.
It's more of the predictive stuff. That's what we call it, oracles, because the first level is just learning how to read a person's chart or a static chart of an event, and then we go into the forecasting piece in the second 8 weeks. So yeah,
I love our people. I love the people who are in the course. So it's like, I think it's really I feel like it's gotten us through these last couple of years all together too.
Oh,
just
for sure.
Being in that amazing community. So
for sure. So yes, this is the only time we are going to offer that. It's 25% off for the level 1, the $500. So it's a great deal. We're not going to be bringing that back again for the 2026 mastermind. So take advantage of this birthday surprise extension if you want to join us and jump in, save your spot. So I feel good saying that now that Mercury retrograde is over, which is one of the big, so this week, what we're looking at, Mercury retrograde is over. It is going to take the first couple weeks of December to what's called station. We call it retro shade. That was, I have to say, that was a term I came up with in 2018 that has entered the lexicon now. Like, it even gets thrown about on morning cable news shows. So funny little
really?
cheeky
Wow.
moment. Yeah. So the retro shade, which is the shadow of Mercury, goes until December 16th. So we will feel kind of the lingering backdraft fumes of it for the first couple weeks, but it's going to get easier every day. And we have a full moon, the last full moon of the year.
A super moon too.
Super moon, yep, on Thursday, December 4th. And that is happening against the backdrop of a Grand Water Trine, which we had in the end of November too with different players. This is a 120-degree equilateral triangle of harmony and flow between Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury in water signs. So if you've noticed, and we're going to get into this, like, over this past holiday season beginning, a lot of family dynamics and emotional stuff, and even some healing coming up. There's going to be more of that going on this week, but with the Gemini full moon, Gemini is about communications and messaging. So
Common ground and synergy. It's a sign of the twins. Will we be able to find common ground, or will we actually get privy to where there's been some double talk? I feel like this full moon is going to be a report card for the Trump administration. So many of them are Geminis, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Trump, Pete Hegseth, who got deliciously, raked over the coals on South Park this week. Definitely watch that. It's like, Pete Hegseth, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, like him showing up everywhere. Like,
I can't wait.
I know, but just what has been going on this year, what chaos has occurred, and then, like you're saying, against the backdrop of this compassionate, empathic water trine between Mercury at the very last bits of Scorpio. It's moving into Sagittarius on the 11th, but Mercury in Scorpio trine Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. So that's kind
Jupiter
of
is retrograde, but the other two are not. What's interesting, I mean, it's like, what's going to wash up ashore? And Mercury now direct. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, where we have the full moon. So I think that this is going to be a week of a lot of communications being delivered, whether passive aggressively, directly, somewhere in between. I mean, Jupiter is the truth teller and Saturn is a sign of boundaries and convention. Saturn and Jupiter are kind of opposite or counter forces. You could say, like,
gas
Saturn,
and the brakes.
Yeah, Jupiter's like the gas, Saturn's like the brakes. So, one thing that's come up a lot on our feeds and from friends is this Oprah episode that she did on estrangement. She had some therapists on talking about people who choose to, cut off their family members. Apparently, a third of all Americans have kind of gone no contact with relatives and loved ones.
Wow.
Whether it's because of political differences that feel way too personal, or some of the education people have gotten around boundaries. Like, this is a 9 universal year in numerology, which is a year of endings before we reset into a 1 year. So, and it's also a snake year, which is, there's a lot of shedding of skins. So one topic that has kind of been hot on the feeds is this Oprah episode on estrangement. Now, you watched the whole thing, which I really think was a great idea, Tali.
Yeah, I wanted to know what was going on there.
Yeah, everyone was reacting to it and saying, oh no, she's telling people, she's fueling this trend of like kids cutting their parents off. Like, and we know that
she wasn't at all.
She wasn't. Yeah, for the record, you checked that out and found that she wasn't. So, but I think people hear what they want to hear, and the short takes and the clips that get shown. And I wish we all did our homework more and listened to the whole thing. But it's interesting because this week with the Gemini full moon and this Grand Water Trine and the holidays all coming up, it's a Mercury retrograde kind of stationing. I think there's a lot of confusion, mixed feelings. We talked about ambiguous loss last week, which is sort of the grief without closure when someone does cut you off or does seem to change, like that you thought that they were someone that you could feel safe around, and then you find out that maybe they've aligned their political beliefs with something that is so personally offensive to you that you don't quite know where to place them. That's not the only version of that, obviously.
There's been a lot of that the last years.
Yeah.
But this year has been really,
yeah, just the last couple of years with the elections and just the world politics and everything moving in these polarized directions. So I think that touched on a topic that's probably going to come up for a lot of people this week, which is, how do we navigate the holidays, time with family? how do we get through to people that don't seem to want to hear us or see us? How do we handle that? And I do happen to have personal experience with that, the extreme, that I think the thing that triggered a lot of people who didn't watch the whole Oprah episode or watched, people's reactions to it, is the experience of someone going no contact with you, um, and shaming and that sort of thing that's come up. So it's like I can see it from both sides. So I want to give a shout out to a book that an amazing woman who had us on her podcast last year has written, Beatriz Victoria Albina. It's called End Emotional Outsourcing. And I think this is a great one to have out now. It's why codependent, perfectionists, and people pleasing habits are brilliant survival skills and don't mean anything is wrong with you. I watched a YouTube where she was talking about this concept of the 3 arrows from Buddhism. So there's the arrow that hurts you. That can be a critical comment, that can be a misunderstanding. That arrow causes the original wound, the pain. But there's a second arrow, which is the story we tell ourselves about the pain, and that's the suffering. So the pain is always real, and we don't have control over that. But the suffering, if we go into victim mode or if we spiral into a story, that's the second arrow. But there's also a third arrow, which is when we catch ourselves being in that spiral of shame and then start to beat ourselves up for having that reaction. So it's like a reaction to our own reaction that gets us deeper and deeper. It's like, prolonged suffering. So it really
I shouldn't feel this way. Oh,
yeah.
Why did I do that? Oh, I should.
Yeah. Like someone says something to you, see, I'm such an idiot. Like someone says, looks like you put on a little weight, had a few too many Thanksgiving leftovers, and you go, damn it, I'm never gonna, why will I hate my body, blah, blah, blah. And then you start to go like, what's wrong? I know better than that. I have to be proud. What's wrong with me for hating my body? Like, and it just goes on and on and on. So, I think that it's kind of tapping into something, a concept that she talks about in this book of self-abandonment. Like, how do you not abandon yourself, but also not abandon others too? Like, it's such a tricky line. So the cutting off of people that I think Oprah became this accidental lightning rod for, and wrongly so. But I think that touched a nerve that we're ready. It says to me that we're ready for a different strategy for dealing with conflict than just that.
Well, it's that or a civil war, and we're having civil wars on the psychological level with each other. But I think this is sort of felt like it's really happened more and more since the pandemic. There was this moment of reckoning that's happened where everybody, we did pull back from people. And then I think a lot of people, myself included in some ways, are learning how to like reconnect. It's like we had this like, oh my God, we were literally afraid of each other. Someone breathing on you the wrong way could, you know, could literally end your life for a little while there. Someone coughing in the room. And that year, we talk about that. We're moving into the second half of the decade. We had 2020, we had that Saturn Pluto conjunction. And I think the last time it had happened was during the Black Plague too, right? It was Saturn and and Pluto are very karmic planets, very shadowy, and they happen to meet in Capricorn, which is a sign of one of the family signs, along with Cancer. And I don't think we've truly recovered from them. I think Jupiter also then joined them that year, 2020. We had Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto all in Capricorn. Um, and I think that Capricorn is very boundaried too. While it is about family, it's also about like, I don't want you, I want you. Saturn and Pluto are very, very boundaried planets. And where we are now is kind of a place, I think we're seeing a lot of the impact of that. And now we're moving into this Aquarian era where we're not even defining ourselves through family of origin anymore. However, Jupiter is in Cancer right now, which is pulling us into like chosen family and recreating family. We have a article in the big book, the big 2026 book called Relationships in the Age of Aquarius. And that's any sort of relationship. We're moving away from this agrarian model. This is something you came up with. We're going from the agrarian age to the Aquarian age. And we don't need each other to like farm and tend to the cows and move around in the wagon and fight off locusts from the fields. We can come together by choice and actually form families. But, now I'm not trying to sound like some turning point USA person here. The answer to that is not to go back to this agrarian age model at all. But, I do think that maybe we're lacking some reverence for family too. You know, let me clear the air a little. I watched the Oprah episode in full so that I could come informed to the podcast because we were talking about this so much. And they weren't suggesting estrangement. She had three therapists on Nedra Tawwab Glover, who wrote Set Boundaries, Find Peace, who I love. And then they had this Dr. Gibson, who wrote Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. She kind of rubbed me personally in the wrong way.
She's the one with the brown hair. And
yeah, I think so. Yeah, she's
like the clips I saw of her, like I had that judgmental reaction because I think it was taken out of context, but yeah.
Well, she has that dispassionate, frosty clinical therapist energy, and she doesn't recommend estrangement. She lets her clients come to that on their own or do their own emotional introspection. But, I do think she's putting that out there in the world a bit. And then there was a third therapist. Let me look up his name real quick. I have it here. Oh, yeah, Joshua Coleman, whose daughter had been estranged from him for 3 years. He wrote The Rules of Estrangement. And I liked what he was saying, which is like at some point we all have to look within, and that's both sides, like the parents and the children. And if both aren't willing to do that work and they've hit that level of estrangement, you are at an impasse, and it's sometimes a parent isn't a parent. Sometimes it isn't safe to continue. Sometimes parents will disown children for their sexuality, and the child decides, you know what? I don't want to put myself in that field again. So it is an individual choice, but I think that what is beautiful about the era we're moving into is that we can form communities. And that's astrologically what's happening, is that we can find family and form family with people, even if they don't share our DNA.
It doesn't have to be a nuclear family model. And I think the nuclear family model is aptly named because we are having some nuclear explosions here within that family model. I think, like another thing that was in the news were a few articles about subconsciously uncoupling and quiet divorcing or quiet quitting your marriage. And it's like mostly about women quiet quitting their marriages because they feel dissatisfied, but also not really able to, or even interested in it was mostly heterosexual women, but not really interested in trying to change their husband's ways, but just kind of like checking out and going and doing their own thing. And I think that is, as I talk about a lot with human design and this 412-year cycle that's ending and beginning a new 400-ish year cycle in 2027, February 2027. Like, we are seeing the end of this cycle that was about planning and grouping and sort of tribalism and that kind of thing astrologically. And it is syncing up with these trends. Like,
think about Uranus and Taurus finishing out 7 years on April 25th, which is very much about Taurus being that core family, like traditional values, and then Uranus throwing this curveball in, and people are doubling down on the conservative factions and trying, Erica Kirk is having her Tammy Faye moment, and it's just it's wild times right now. I
yeah.
I do want to say though that one thing that I don't want to step over, and something that was addressed on the Oprah podcast, was that there is a core undeniable pain that any human will have from an estrangement from a parent or a child. This is not a decision that makes anyone feel good no matter what, like the child or the parent. Everybody always has a reason for doing it, but the child or parent on the other side might not understand it or agree with it. Or maybe it's mental health is the reason, but there's a pain that a chosen family is not going to be able to totally heal. That's like a soul wound that everyone has to heal on their own with therapy.
And having experienced that firsthand in a couple of situations in my family, I think that, and we didn't grow up with like cutting people off even being an option. Like, but there could have been a lot more boundaries, a lot more. But
there was a time where I was feeling like, oh, I don't want to talk to dad anymore, and I think, we had some self-development work and courses that came along serendipitously to.
I never considered that personally as that. I was like, I might spend less time around or like have a strategy for walking away from volatile situations. But like, a cutting off, you're dead to me kind of thing was not an option I considered. And I respect that some people do consider that. I think I think the tricky part is when the person who's doing the cutting off maybe is going through some kind of a phase, even like in sort of a cult mindset. Like, we've talked about this a lot in the year of the snake and the 9 year. There's been a lot of sort of, a cult can even be on a 1-to-1 level with two people, where one person, the rules of engagement for a relationship require one person to set the rules and the other to be obedient. And there's not equality and sovereignty. That is not what the age of Aquarius and Pluto and Aquarius that we're going to experience the next 19 years, that's not what it's about. So in those cases where a healthy person who is willing and able to communicate and solve conflict gets cut off, I think that is where a lot of people got triggered, because they had experienced that. And that can create what's called ambiguous loss, which we talked about last week, where you have grief that never has any closure. So it can create this ongoing open loop that can take up a lot of psychological space. I've been reading about it a lot over this holiday and just kind of trying to educate myself for some situations in my own life, and a lot of people that I know, a lot of my clients, and just what tools could I share about and offer. And one of the tools that I thought was great that I did myself was making a list of ambiguous loss relationships from my own life from the past year. Like, who am I not in contact with, or who changed? Like, I had a friend who probably is having some mental health issues, and she just like really isn't the same person at all. And responded to my like, hey, where have you been, with like I don't think this is going to work out, as you know. And I was like, whoa, 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 like, what is going on here? And
it's painful. It's so painful.
yeah, so it was like it was actually from the Mayo Clinic website, so very, uh, uh, a solid resource. It suggested like make a grief list and just journal all the things that you are grieving that are lost, at least for the moment, while you're in this state with that person where you're unable to reach them for closure. And it's just like, oh, grieving some of the memories or the moments or the bond, or like feeling understood by a friend, or like having that kind of a female friendship where you're on the same page and that kind of thing. And just like, oh, the things that I thought we'd be able to do because we're working on some stuff together too, like how the hope I had for some of the professional projects that we thought we might do. So I found it to actually be kind of healing to
Good idea.
to
Yeah.
do that.
Good thing, good way to move it through with the all the grand water trines we've been having
And the
over the last
Gemini.
few
So I
weeks.
think, with Mercury not being retrograde, our thoughts will start to clear up. And the Gemini full moon, I mean, Gemini is about writing, speaking, dialogue. It's the twins. So one of
Sometimes
the
you can't talk to people. You need to,
you need to write a letter that you don't send, or do some journaling. Another exercise that I don't know if anyone has recommended it before, but it was something I kind of made up for myself years ago with an ex-boyfriend, um, was to write myself a letter from him as though it was
I
from him,
remember.
almost like an automatic writing. And it was like, dear Ophi, I know I told you this, but the truth is I was actually feeling like this. I was, and it was like, it created sort of a compassion bridge because I put myself in what I would imagine were his shoes, or what his higher self would say to me. Like, so it wasn't like, oh, he's forgiven, he's excused, that's okay that he did that to me. But I was like, if his higher self was to write me an apology letter, spirit to spirit, soul to
Yeah.
soul, what might he say?
And I want to, I have been like you on both sides of that. Like it's so painful to be on the receiving end of like someone suddenly deciding to cut you off, and nothing you can say, and they won't talk about it, and you don't know what you've done wrong, and they've been making you a villain. But I've also been on the other side of it too, and I think there's also people out there who are feeling like Oprah was not hearing, them and their perspective. Like sometimes you have to cut people off, but she was, but it was, there's only so much you can say on a podcast. But I recall when I was in the state of mind of like, no one understands me, and our parents don't care, and they don't know who I am. It was like I was in my mid 20s and had a lot of stress going on in life. I'd moved to New York. You hadn't moved there yet. I was trying to find my way, and you know, it was a bit of a struggle, and it was like overwhelming, and it's just, I think I was like dealing with my own depression and sadness, and also reviewing things from our childhood and ways that I wish things had gone different, or that I'd stood up for myself more. And, it's very, there was genuine stuff that needed to be worked out. Honestly, it was like, we've done a lot of self-development courses, even some more, cutting edge ones, if you will. We've done, I think it was the Landmark Forum that, does encourage people to go and reconnect with their parents, which isn't always the best thing. I don't agree with that by and large, but that was what the universe put in front of me, and I did it, and I wound up having the best conversation ever with our dad. And he's still, we still butt heads a lot. There's still things he does, like even politically, that I completely disagree with. But I I think that took me away from estrangement with our family, but that's my personal choice. Or some people, I don't judge anyone's choice. Like, we're not judging anyone's choice on this. We're like Oprah, we're just talking about it. But I just know that I had to go through my own healing as a daughter and my own, I had to make space for my own pain about the way some things went in our childhood before I could reach out and create the adult relationship that we have. So sometimes people need to go through their process. My policy is anyone who comes forward with an honest apology is there's always going to be, if I've loved you before and you haven't like violated boundaries so much, you just estranged, the door is always open for forgiveness for me, but not everybody's like that. So, anyways, we have Saturn and Neptune finishing up their tour of Pisces close together. Pisces is a sign of endings, transitions, grief, healing, forgiveness. So this is a subject that's probably going to be on everyone's mind, and there's nothing conclusive. I will say though, this month, Venus and Mars are together in Sagittarius until December 15th. And then Mars moves into Capricorn, and then Venus catches up on Christmas Eve. And they're together in Capricorn until January 17th. And then a few days later, January 23rd, they're both in Aquarius for a few weeks. So Venus and Mars, a planet of war and peace, love and sex and passion and seduction are going to be together for a couple good months, for the next 2.5 months. And I like that. I think that I don't know what you think, Ophi, but
I mean,
think
I'll
that's
always
gonna-
remember our uncle who was an Aries, the Mars ruled sign, like tapping his fork on the side of his plate and saying, if you can't fight with someone, you can't love them. And he was the father of 6, our cousins, who do like to fight quite a lot. I don't know if I agree with that, but it always stuck with me as like, well, okay. I think he's got
younger generations don't like to fight.
No.
Gen X, boomers, we're like, put your dukes up, let's go. But the new way of fighting is more of a Cold War with millennials and Gen Z. And I think that's
it's like not caring.
That's what's hard.
I think that's what hurts like people from maybe our generation, like the like when you Gen Xers and boomers who are now of the parent and grandparent ages, like worked really hard to make sure that the kids that we, were responsible for, whether nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren, could thrive and have all the things that they have. A lot of us really made sacrifices and worked hard, and then to be met with sort of indifference feels bad. But I think to the younger generations, that feels transactional. Like, well, that's your job. You brought me into this world. Why? I don't owe you. You owe me because you're my parent. Or so. I mean,
I feel like I was a brat like
I
that.
think it's an age group.
Too. I think it's an age.
I think it's like, honestly, I don't think it's any.
We just have social media now, so we're all talking about it. It's like everyone can have a platform,
like that.
Not just someone cast for the Maury Povich show.
I know. I feel like, like people act like people in Gen Z and millennials are so different than Gen X. It's like, no, they're not. They're just.
But they do have more access to trends that are like and to that, forget Oprah. I do find that this blanket pathologizing that we all do of all generations, anyone who's on social media, it's like everyone's a narcissist, everyone's got attachment wounds, everyone has trauma, this and that. And we do. And that's nothing new. But the way it's talked about as if it's like, what's the second arrow? What's the third arrow that we go to? I think we need some better tools. We've identified the problem, but if the only solution that we have for it is estrangement, which I think has become a popular solution since the pandemic more and more, And that I'm blaming Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. And I'm just like, we we need something else because we do coexist on this planet. Venus and Mars and Sagittarius till the 15th is a time for self-love and independent assessment and
but also seeing the
looking at
bigger
our
picture and being a little more
totally
philosophical. And Gemini is also about books and podcasts and like information, and it's the duality. It's like, can you hold both, and can you be upset with someone but also love them? And again,
well, we have like the
everybody,
body keeps a score, the adult children of emotionally immature parents. Okay, what I love about Beatrice Victoria Albina's book is that she actually gives some solutions. Like we're
yeah.
really great at diagnosing the problem, but I don't think that, the solution isn't something we can find on Perplexity or by taking another
Oh
supplement.
my
It's
God.
actually
Sentient
really hard
AI.
work.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, yeah.
I miss the kind of work that we used to do in ballrooms. We did a lot of those, like, Landmark,
Seminars.
Sterling Institute, Mama Gina School of the Womanly Arts, stuff that might get canceled in this current time because it's kind of like a little bit of shock therapy, but man, do I have to say, I feel like getting in each other's faces and getting it out in the open, and there's something about that humanity of that, if it's at least monitored in a healthy way, it's like, oh my God, it just built a
But when
little
you
bit of
clear all of
resilience.
that, love becomes present between you and the other person because we've stopped being honest in a facilitated, safe space. We become estranged from one another in this culture. So it's not just in our families, we become estranged as a human family. And so,
Do you think we're estranged from parts of ourself? Let's go internal family systems here.
sure,
Have
sure.
we become estranged from the parts of ourselves that, can problem solve because we're so stressed out and overstimulated and our
Well, I
dopamine
talked about that
supplies.
last week on the pod about Dysregulation Nation and the account that I started following and the neuro effects of the ambiguous grief and loss we're feeling for our democracy and the free world that those of us listening to this are most likely to live in, and how it doesn't feel like what it was. It doesn't feel like that is actually a given or a guarantee in any way anymore. So, yes, we are having like a collective kind of mourning as well. And I think that there's a lot to unpack this week under the Gemini full supermoon with this Grand Water Trine. And Jupiter being one of the three players in this Grand Trine, Jupiter is retrograde in Cancer. So Jupiter being the big picture, retrograde looking back, and Cancer, the family and the home. Not surprised at all that this is coming up. I think that that we're getting a report card, like you said, Tali, of where the progress that we've made, that we know how to name these things, so that if there are abusive and unsafe people in our families, lives, homes, communities, genuinely,
Government.
who are government everywhere, who are doing harm, churches, temples, whatever, anywhere, we're better able to recognize the signs and get ourselves to safety if that person is there. You know, it's far from a problem.
It's so hard to talk about this because, there's such a spectrum. So for anyone who's out there listening to the podcast, we are not saying you should stay in contact with someone who is
No.
abusive, and only you get to define what is abusive to you. And that's the tough thing. Like, what's abusive to one person isn't to another.
But there are
It's
some pretty clear lines that that people cross. So there's the gray area, there's the absolutely, like, this is not, I mean, we saw that with what happened with the Epstein files. Like, all of a sudden, like, pedophile was the ultimate, like, indictment, that that the MAGA community, if you want to call it that, was like
Cult.
the MAGA cult was using that. And then all of a sudden, when the Epstein files indicted their members, or it was like, well, the age of consent is too high, it should be lowered. So all of a sudden they're fudging the rules.
Disgusting.
So that kind of thing also, like,
well, some people may have to be estranged from people who are in a cult, in the MAGA cult. Like there's
or
people
other
that
cults.
I'm not interested in talking to, and then I've cut off contact with because of that. It just became too just hostile and upsetting to talk to them. And so, we can see we can be both and in this situation. And I think many of us are, there's some people who just can't talk to right now, and it's hard and it's sad. And there's some people that
I think the issue that this raises, though, that is probably triggering for people is when someone suddenly stops talking to you, doesn't tell you why, doesn't give you any like, hey, doesn't think about you as a human being with feelings, who did their best, but their best is also deeply unaware. Like some of our parents' friends who we grew up with, who are very much in, a political worldview that is just, I'm like, okay, I do not even want to go there. And I know if I'm around them, it's going to come up. So not now, versus like, you're dead to me, you don't exist. So I think, anyway, that's
and the thing that, well, we're hammering this home, but just, there is, if, this is something that was brought up on the Oprah podcast, that is the hardest part of all. And maybe it's the third arrow that you talked about, but it's like, like, if would it make a difference with some people? Not always. I've had friend breakups where it's like, hey, I just want to talk to you. Just, I'm here to listen. Tell me. Let's just talk this out. And when I look back, it's like, well, I have to ask from their perspective, and I'll never know. Why didn't they feel like they could talk to me? Well, either they were people pleasing, or maybe they knew that I was going to be feisty and defensive, which I have been at different times in my life, or maybe it was something else. So it's like, are we willing, with, this Gemini full super moon, are we willing to ask ourselves the hard questions too? Not to blame and shame ourselves, but to grow, to say, maybe I didn't do things perfectly. And maybe there's an opportunity to, go back and say, what could I have done differently? Or how could I, and for, with kindness and self-compassion, of course. So I know I've had perimenopause, tempestuous moments. I threw a purse at Ophi once. Not proud of that.
Slammed my hand down on the table and a credit card flew up and like hit her on the throat once. I mean, that's probably my deepest shame. Like it was almost like straight out of a movie. So like, we also have to own that we had our moments.
A glass and broke it, not at you, but
we've had our twin fights. We've lost our tempers. Like nobody is superhuman. We all do our best, but here we are. That's why I'm going to really I'm going to really re-recommend this book, End Emotional Outsourcing. I'm looking at the checklist of what's in it, and she talks about the role of childhood attachment, survival strategies, and systems of oppression in your people pleasing or perfectionist patterns, tools to stop ruminating, second guessing, and editing yourself in real time, and why your nervous system's regulation, not mindset alone, is the key to real change. And I really like that.
That's very Gemini full moon.
That's very, also like how to build true internal safety so you can say no without spiraling. This is really bringing home what I think I've been trying to say as I read that, which is like, if you don't feel emotionally safe, regulated, and, just, safe within yourself, and you don't feel worthy or entitled to speak what's true for you without harming another person, just in a responsible way. I think it's sometimes that's why we do these extreme things that aren't warranted with people. Like cutting them off and then not cutting off the people that we probably should cut off. In certain situations, some of the people that get cut off are the ones that are trying to be there for us, whereas the ones who are closest to us are confusing us. Like, so we have a lot of work to do, I think, in knowing ourselves. I guess that comes back to why we love astrology. Like, astrology, I take for granted. Now, I got my first astrology chart when I was 21 as a gift from Calvin, my college boyfriend, and his amazing mom, Brenda. And that was now 32 years ago. So
Wow.
much,
Well,
this week.
we-
So, I mean, we take for granted that we've had this map all along, this kind of instruction manual to ourselves to refer to. And that has kept me emotionally regulated in situations when I don't think I would have been. So,
and we have to all know and remember that we have all 12 zodiac signs in our chart. And that's actually lesson one of Become Your Own Astrologer. We go through your chart. Let's find Aries in your chart. Let's find Taurus in your chart. They're going to wind up somewhere on the wheel in a specific house, or you're going to have potentially have planets in them. Aries is a warrior. It can be the violator. Pisces can be the saintly, compassionate one, or the ultimate victim and manipulator.
yeah.
Yeah. So, like, we have all these parts inside of us. And I think when we disown, there's a lot of disowning, a lot of projection that, and this is not, I'm not talking about estrangement at all right now. Again, I just want to underscore that, I don't have a problem personally with estrangement. Sometimes it's really, really and truly warranted. Um, where I just, want to direct focus, where I'm always trying to look within myself because I can only speak for myself, is how can I grow if there's an estrangement? I mean, I've been an asshole in my life. I've been hyper emotional and freaked out and vicious. And I've been way too nice and kind and a doormat and I had no boundaries. I've had the whole range. And I think we all have. But that third arrow when I feel shame about like it's just like a constant thing for me to keep my environment calm for myself. Because when I'm in a calm and peaceful environment, if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, Tali, I really, that conversation we had, like, you really hurt my feelings," or, I can be like, "Whoa, let me look at myself." But if I'm like stressed out and pushing things, and someone comes to me, I might be like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, so it is a lot of the ways that we set our lives up to can also determine and the phase that we're in our lives hormonally. What parent are we? Do we have small kids? Are we worried about a job loss? Like, the phase that we're in our lives can also determine that. And I always also work hard to have grace for other people too, if they're not just full on, villains. Like, what are they dealing with right now? I've had friends who were like 10 years older than me when I was 40. They were going through menopause and like freaked out on me and like cried and this and was like, now I'm like, wow, okay, I know, honey, you didn't have an estrogen patch then. So, it's like the wisdom, the tincture of time is also a healing thing. And with Venus and Mars and Capricorn, that rules the longer plays. We've set, that's, I think there's
Later
going
in
to
the
be
month, we're gonna have that.
potentially
I
a
think
lot of healing
Christmas to
over.
New Year is going to
There
be
could be some
a lot
family
more
healing.
grounding. Yeah, I think.
And Saturn going into Aries, Saturn leaving Pisces. Saturn in Pisces since March 7th, 2023 has been like Dolly's melting clock. It's been like Saturn rules time, and Pisces is this like hazy, timeless, psychedelic. So, like, what is even going on? Now, I just want to say one thing I'm looking forward to, and I think we're all going to have to like snap into in 2026. Saturn and Neptune, February 20th, 0 degrees Aries, the first point of the chart. Then Saturn's going to be in Aries for 2 years, Neptune for 13 years. We are going to have to, you know, I hate it sounds so gross to say, but we've got to toughen up a little bit here. Like we're gonna have to get into this active mode,
Resilience. I think it's like a
build
gonna
a little
develop some
more action
resilience.
plan and an action plan. Okay. Now what are we gonna do about this bullshit? Like what are we gonna
Mhm.
do? Feelings have been hurt. Fractures have been made, some irreparable, some, pushing us in a totally new direction, some bringing new phases of relationships. What the F are you going to do about it? That's how Aries talks. And so that's that's a question next year. You're ready. We are ready for 2026. So much more so than we realized because 2025 was a soft launch. We had Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune hitting these three signs, moving from these yin, water, earth signs to yang, fire, air. And then they move back, like we've been talking to the water and earth. So it's like we're ending the year in this like feelings. But starting January 26th, Neptune goes into Aries. February 13th, Saturn goes into Aries. April 25th, Uranus goes into Gemini. And it's like, there's not going to be time to like sit
Back into that
around
yang,
navel gaze.
fire, and air
But
for
it's
the
a
rest
hard
of the decade.
launch, the
Yeah, it's
hard launch of our response to everything coming at us, social programs being dissolved, transhumanism, tech bros. What are we going to do about it? Like,
AI.
it's going to be, I think it's going to be good, but like, we all are like, enjoy the downtime because it's not, next year is going to be, create
Feel it.
that peaceful space, create that try do your very best, even if it means working communally to take your stress down because wow, we are going to need it's an active year next year and we
Yeah.
write all about it in our 2026 horoscope book.
Yeah. So if you haven't gotten yours and you're listening to this early in the week, grab our Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Giving
Bundles.
Tuesday bundles because they are going away. We have our manifestation bundles. We're almost out of them. Hopefully, we're not out of them, but that comes with a book, a planner, a tote bag, a crystal, the PDF. It's our Get It All bundle. Our big book has all 12 signs plus a special almanac section with predictions for the wider world in the second half of the decade. Our individual zodiac sign daily horoscope planners have just your sign. They're 3 for $99. So if you're listening to this early, go check out what's left in the sale because they are an awesome thing that people have told us they keep by their bedside all year. You can just open it up, check what's ahead for the day, the week. It's really designed for that. And so if you go to astrostyle.com/holiday, that is our holiday sale. And we also have, like Tali said before, $500 off our Become Your Own Astrologer course, which to me, again, is one of the ultimate emotional regulation tools. Learning how to read birth charts, know what's ahead, plan ahead. It doesn't
know how you tick, design your life to understand that. Understand actually doing birth charts for the people in your life is a great insurance policy to reduce the risk of estrangement.
Whether whether they know that you've done them or not or are into it, just knowing what's going on under the hood for sure. I think there's just, I guess, like, since we talked about it a lot, there's a full moon in Gemini during Sag season, both big communication signs. So, like, get it out of your head, whether it's onto the page, whether you write a letter to yourself from someone that you're estranged from or in conflict with, to just get to a neutral place, whether you make a grief list around a relationship that doesn't have closure. Whether you sit down and have an honest conversation with, hopefully there are people in your life that you can have those with and reach a greater understanding, or express gratitude and acknowledgement and appreciation. There doesn't have to be a problem. Acknowledgement is one of the greatest gifts you can give someone. So if there's someone in your life who has been a positive force during this chaotic, turbulent year, this is the week to tell them and thank them. You don't have to spend money. It doesn't cost a thing. Or maybe, Gemini is about local spaces. Maybe you take them out for a drink or a coffee or a meal, or go for a walk and look at the holiday lights, whatever floats your mutual boats. But just taking time to connect with your community, connect with your people, connect with like-minded, kindred spirits, and appreciate. That has been the saving grace of 2025. Like during this civil war, that we're living in, psychological civil war. I think just it's been painful to see how divided we are in a bigger picture way in society, but also super healing to see who we're not divided from and to strengthen those bonds. And this is a really great week to do that. And
we really is a lot of, there's not a lot of, lot happening this week astrologically, the full moon and then the Grand Water Trine. So I think we get a chance to kind of integrate too. The last thing I want to toss in real quick is, if you are grabbing the manifestation bundle, people ask us, should I read for my sun sign, my moon sign, my rising sign? We always recommend getting the planner for your sun sign, because the sun really is the essence of who you are. And we write to you as if, we're dear Leo or Cancer, Scorpio. But reading for your rising sign makes sense if you want to do the whole sign houses. So the big book bundled together with that, you can check the forecast. You can also read the forecast for your rising sign. If you don't know what your rising sign is, it's your ascendant. It's the sign that was on the eastern horizon when you were born, and it starts your chart. You'll learn all about that if you become your own astrologer, which, by the way, you can be at any level. You don't have to know anything about astrology, or you can be a pro to take. We've always had people who are across the spectrum, and, it works for everyone. We have coaches in there too who can help you if you need. But if you want to read for your rising sign, then that's great. Get the rising sign planner and read your sun sign in
it's really your choice, like everything we said today.
But the moon sign, we
don't
write for the moon sign. The moon sign is like your emotional nature.
The moon moves every couple days, so it's not. I don't know who's out there telling people to read for their moon sign. It's like, at that point, my opinion is, learn how to read a birth chart. If you want to get that personal, then learn how to read your birth chart, because you can track what the planets in the sky.
But the moon isn't as active either. The moon, I mean, we write our forecasts in these books to give you something to do every day and get you into action too. And your moon is more of that reflective energy. The moon's important, of course, but
so if you're a sun and rising sign reader, get the manifestation bundle, because you'll get the journal planner for your sign, but you will also have the big book with all 12 signs. You can refer to that to see what your rising sign forecast for the year is as well. And you can have it all. And a nice sturdy tote to put both of those books in. Our totes are not flimsy. They're a really nice, strong canvas. Our limited edition La Luna tote. It's the tote that Tali designed for our retreats that we used to do in Tulum, Mexico from 2013 to 19. And yeah, we would love,
and a carnelian, the crystal of the year, that was sourced in the mountains of Colorado from a very reputable crystal proprietor. So Jennifer on our team traveled to get it, which I love. So it's a great deal. And then you get the PDF too, so you can always keep it on your phone and reference it.
We know what people want, because we've heard this is our 15th year doing the book. So we know that people like to have it on every device, and to grab and to put out on the coffee table. So you get your individual sign to keep on your nightstand, the big book for the coffee table, the PDF for your devices.
And they all come with a
crystal for your pocket.
bonus too. They all come, you get a bonus, the calendar plus populators. So whatever you get, right now we're giving the bonus where you'll get a little applet thing that loads all the hotspot dates onto your iCal or Google Calendar. So you'll get a little pop-up reminder when the full moon is coming or when Mercury's going retrograde, and a ticket to our 2026 Planet by the Planets webinar. In January, we do that every year. And we walk you through the highlights. 111 this year. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, we're going to go forth into our birthday week and wishing everybody out there a week of closeness, not estrangement, heart healing,
productive conversations, breakthrough dialogue,
internal insights,
peace within yourself. Sometimes you can't talk to that person because you don't want to, they don't want to, it's not appropriate. But can you try to get the energy that's charged or causing you to ruminate to a more neutral place by creating a sense of emotional safety and self-compassion and, non-self-abandonment within yourself? There are always tools. Sometimes working on the relationship doesn't work, but creating greater resilience and growth within yourself and love for yourself is a balm of its own. So wishing
really
you that.
warm. This is a really warm, fuzzy episode. We didn't even really talk about crazy shit happening in the world. There's plenty of it, but God, our souls all need a break.
We deserve
just wait
a break.
till Thursday. Thursday is Gemini full supermoon. We'll have plenty to talk about next week. I mean, I'm looking at China and Japan and the tariffs and all, it's like, okay, let's, So
we'll be on Instagram and we'll be back next week. So,
okay. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. It was, wishing you a beautiful start to your December, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to AstroTwins Radio. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, we'd be over the moon if you left us a 5-star review. It helps fellow astrology lovers find us. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow us on iTunes and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Want the full visual experience? You can also watch the video version on our YouTube at AstroTwins-TV. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at AstroTwins and head over to astrostyle.com to read your free daily, weekly, and monthly horoscope that we write for you with love. Until next time, move with intention and let the universe meet you there.